On today's episode of Locked On Wild, guess what? I got a fever, and the only prescription is more Four Nations.
Hey, this is Matt Foldy, and you're listening to Locked On Wild.
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team each and every day. We thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. On today's episode, we will give midseason report cards for Eriksson Ek, Kirill Kaprizov, and Foligno. We'll talk about why I was dead wrong about the Four Nations face-off as well. My name is Seth Toupal, host of Locked On Wild, and I am food prepping for the Four Nations face-off tonight between Team USA and Canada. I'm prepping like it's the Super Bowl. We got pulled pork in the crock pot, made homemade guacamole earlier today, and I got a couple of other things to make before the game tonight. I could not have been more wrong about this tournament. It's been fantastic to watch the first few games. Obviously helps that the Minnesota Wild contingent is representing very well. And I got to say, this is absolutely the route that the NHL should go in terms of replacing the All-Star Game. It's compelling. The players are mega intense in these games. Every single player that is playing in these games, this is near the top of their list. And as a result, it looks the part. It looks the part, and the games have been very exciting too, with the exception of the Team USA beatdown. More specifically, the Tkachuk brothers beatdown of Finland, setting up tonight's matchup against Canada. It's been great, and I offer my apologies to the NHL contingent that put it together, because I would be very happy with this going forward. But we'll see how it's tweaked. Obviously, Russia not in there right now. It'd be nice to get them in eventually, but that's a topic for another show. We'll talk a little bit more about it to preview the matchup tonight, but I want to keep going with these midseason report cards. And we've got three players on today's docket that are having varying levels of success. We're going to start off with Eriksson Ek. And for Ek, so far this season, 41 games. He's got 9 goals, 14 points, 14 assists, 23 total points. The numbers, by and large, are down. It's going to be the fewest amount of games that Eriksson Ek has played in a season since 2020, 2021, assuming that he ends up playing in right about 60 games and gets in the final. He's missed 15 so far. And if he gets in the rest of the games, should get him in the 70s. But total number of games played, down. Goals, down. Assists, down. Points, down. Plus minus, down compared to last year. Shooting percentage is down. Shots on goal is down. Time on ice is down. Face-off percentage down. And it's pretty evident that Ek he's fighting through some things so far this season. But even with all the offensive numbers being down, I was encouraged to just look at some of the key stats to see that the Ek that we all know is still there. Defensively, Eriksson Ek is 1/10 of a defensive point share off of his career high that he set last year of 2.5. He's already at 2.4 for the season defensively. So his defensive metrics are as good as they've been. It's his offense that's taken the big hit this year. Just one offensive point share so far this season. He had 4.7 last year, for the year before that. So it really has been the offense that's taken a hit for Joel Eriksson Ek this year, but the defense still continues to get it done. So that same guy is there. He just, with the emergence of Marco Rossi, he's not as high up on the totem pole offensively. So that has taken some chances away. With the injuries to various Minnesota Wild players, the line combinations have been juggled extensively. Ek is playing more of a second line role this year than a first line role like he did last year. And I think that's part of it. I think having an injury that impacts your shot a little bit, I think, is another aspect. But it is at least still the same defensive guy that we are used to. Just the offense for the first time in his career has really taken a major dip. But let's look at the points. So 41 out of 56 games for Eriksson Ek so far. That is 73%. So that puts him at 7 out of 10 on the points scale. Now, it's interesting, too, because you look at where X points are at this year. He is on an 82-game pace for 47 points. So even though the numbers are down compared to where they've been the last few years, he's still on a 47-point pace with where he's at. And that still slots in above his career average of 45. So he's going to get a little bit of a bump there. And this is one of those instances where it looks kind of weird because you improve for 4 straight seasons, and then you finally have a little bit of a drop, but it's still above his career numbers. So he's getting 21 out of 20 there for the production. And for the impact games, this is the one that I think was most eye-opening for me. Went through and charted all 41 games that Eriksson Ek has played so far this season and ended up with him at 24 impact games out of 41. How does a center get impact games, you may ask? Well, I look at, I look at the counting stats. Do you have multiples of, for instance, blocked shots? You block a couple of shots, that's an impact. You get a couple of hits, that's an impact. If you get over 50% in the faceoff circle on any given game, that's making an impact. Obviously, points, shots on goal, that kind of stuff all factors in. 24 out of 41 games with an impact is 59%. So that is what is going to drag Eriksson Ek's score down to 33 out of 40, which is a B. 83% on the season, and I think we'd be okay considering what we've seen with giving Eriksson Ek a B. It's one of those where the defense is an A. The offense is probably a C minus, which is where then you average them out, you put them together, and that's where you get the B. I think that's pretty accurate considering what we've seen. Now, so far in the Four Nations face-off, Eriksson Ek has scored a goal. He's assisted on a couple of others. He looks great. So this is a topic that I heard on K-Fan the other day, wondering if these players who play in the Four Nations face-off are going to benefit, get a little bit of a jolt from playing with better competition and playing in games with much higher stakes. Very well could. Eriksson Ek seems to have been revitalized by that for sure, which is great because who was one of the harshest critics of him performing in said Four Nations face-off? This guy. I didn't want him to take any part in it. I thought the break would be much more beneficial, but he clearly looks like he's found a little something in that mix. So hopefully that's a nice little springboard to the second half of the season for Joel Eriksson Ek, because the Wild could certainly use him. they're going to need a big, healthy dose of Eriksson Ek down the stretch in order to do anything the rest of the way. So solid B for Eriksson Ek for this season. The defense obviously continues to be on point. Offense, room for improvement. So we'll see if we get that from Eriksson Ek here the rest of the way. We are going to continue. We'll move our attention to Kirill Kaprizov because Kirill has all the numbers, just doesn't have the games this year. So we'll take a look at Kirill's numbers and his score as we continue today's episode of Locked on Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked on Wild is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. FanDuel makes it so easy. You may decide one day you want to bet on a team to cover. You may want to bet on individual players. FanDuel has all of the options to fit how you feel that day, and they can make the process so easy for you to get going. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked on Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day of the week. Reminder, join us tomorrow. Denny's latest live show will be picking up at noon, and this is going to be one that we'll be remembering for quite a while. So make sure to tune in as get some big things on the schedule. So noon, YouTube right here, and it's going to be an unbelievable show. So make sure to join us. Let's talk about Kirill Kaprizov and get his mid-season report card for this year. Obviously, for Kirill, he was in the early part of the season, he was a Hart Trophy contender, maybe the favorite in the first part of the season, and was a huge reason that the Minnesota Wild got off to a 17-4-4 start. Then he got hurt, and there's a lot of discussion as to should Kaprizov have just opted to have surgery right away. Why did the team wait as long as they did? Well, just off of kind of deductive reasoning of how these things work, it obviously was Kirill's preference to try to play through it and see if that was possible. Player like that, just Kaprizov wants to be out there. He wants to play. He wants to be part of the group and leading the charge for this team. So obviously that was the first choice, is let's see if we can kind of navigate through this, maybe get to the Four Nations break and then get off your feet for a couple of weeks. It didn't work. And John Hines said as much, Bill Guerin said as much in that presser where they announced that Kaprizov was having surgery. Said he wasn't able to be the type of player he wanted to be. So then at that point, they made the decision to have surgery, which was the right call. Get that thing healed up and get ready for the push, the final push to the playoffs. This team's going to need him down the stretch. So get him fully healthy and gear up for a frantic fight to the finish. As far as the grading goes, Kirill has played in 37 out of 56 games. That is 66% of the games, so that's 6 out of 10 points for the attendance. As far as the pace goes, and this is the bummer, Kirill was on pace for 114 points. And that factored in a stretch of play where he just didn't look the part. Like after he initially got banged up around Christmas, then took 12 days to just kind of try to get himself rested up and ready. Came back, just didn't quite look the part. So even factoring all that in, he still was on pace for 114 points, which is above his career average for 82 games, which is 99. So he gets high marks there, 23 out of 20 points for the production. And as far as impact games go, 33 out of 37 in the impact department for Kaprizov. Shots on goal, goals, assists. It's a heavy part of the puzzle for Kaprizov throughout this mix. Is he certainly makes his impact on the game. So that was 89%, which is 8 out of 10. Kaprizov finishes with 37 out of 40 points, which is an A. I feel like that's pretty accurate. Had he played more games, his production would be higher. His impact score was still pretty high. Just the fact that he has missed a great deal of games, 19 and counting, is the reason that his score was where it is, which is still an A, and it's still he still is the single most important player to this mix. The team has found ways to win games without him in the lineup, but he is the engine that operates the car. He's the straw that stirs the drink, and he was a huge reason as to why this team got off to the start that they did. So it's one of those weird things of like, hey, the team, I think they were 6-1 in the first 7 games he missed. Well, now that has leveled off, as you'd expect it would. This just has been a very weird Minnesota Wild season. He still is somebody that they need in the lineup every night, not only for what he brings to the table, but the opportunities that he sets up for his teammates. And the offense is just going to take a big hit when he's not out there. So the hope is, if it is going to be 4 weeks, that he still would have about a month of the season left when he returns to get himself in game shape and to put himself in position to make a major impact over that final stretch of games. But it's going to be tight. It's going to be a very frantic finish for this Wild team, and even if they get him back as like a post-trade deadline acquisition, it's going to make a big difference. And, just a shame that it happened when he was playing arguably his best hockey of his career, which is saying something considering he has multiple 40-goal seasons, multiple seasons of 90 points plus. The fact that he was on pace to shatter all of that this year and now won't be able to, that stinks. It stinks. And even if he comes back and plays in all 61 games as ESPN projects, if he ends up with 61 games at the end of the season, they're projecting he has 38 goals, 48 assists, so 85 points in 61 games is still pretty good. That's still pretty outstanding. So we'll see when he comes back, and he'll be welcomed with open arms when he does eventually get back into the lineup. So Kaprizov getting the A. We're going to finish our report cards here for today with a player that I don't think is getting enough attention for what is widely becoming a career year. We'll talk about Marcus Foligno as we finish today's episode of Locked on Wild after this. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. A reminder, join us at noon tomorrow for Denny's latest show. Got a lot of great topics on the docket, but you're going to want to tune in to this one visually. You're going to want to see what is cooking up behind the scenes. It'll all be unveiled tomorrow. So make sure to join us at noon. Going to be an unforgettable show, as they always are. So make sure to join us at noon right here on YouTube. Let's talk about Marcus Foligno, who has, I think, flown under the radar a little bit. His season last year, he played in 55 games and then had core surgery. All told, 10 goals, 12 assists, 22 points in 55 games. He was a plus 10, 179 hits, 40 blocks, played about 14 and a half minutes per night on the ice, shot 17.9% on the season. And we're at 56 games this year for Marcus Foligno, and he basically has identical numbers to what he had last year. In 56 games so far this year, he's played every one. 10 goals, 11 assists, 21 points. He's a plus 11. Has 53 penalty minutes this year compared to 59 last year. Is shooting 16.1%. He's taken a few more shots this year. 14 minutes, 10 seconds per night on the ice. 27 blocks, 177 hits. It's literally a carbon copy of the season that he had last year. And from a points shares perspective, Marcus Foligno is having the best defensive season of his career. 2.6 defensive point shares so far this season. Now, on offense, he's at 0.9, at basically just right below 1 offensive point share, which his career high is 2.9, which he set in 2021-2022. Pretty solid outlier season for many Minnesota Wild players. But his defense has been as good as it ever has been. He is on pace, if things continue, he's on pace for 15 goals. He's on pace for 31 points. He's on pace for 259 hits. And all of those would be the second best numbers in his career. His career best in goals is 23 back in the 2021-2022 season. 15 would be the first time that he's ever gotten to that number other than that career year. His previous career high was 13 goals. So it'd be the second most goals he's had in his career in a season. 16 assists would be the second most he's ever had in a season, again to 2021-2022. 31 points would be the second most he's ever had in a season, again 2021-2022. 259 hits would be the second most he's had in a season since 2016-2017. And, Foligno, I think, was one of the ones that I was most worried about heading into the offseason, because it just looked like it was going to be tough for him to play close to 60, 70 games. And now this year he has not missed a beat and has done everything that he did last year with a chance to far and away exceed those numbers. So what do the stats say? So Foligno's played in all 56 games, so he gets 10 out of 10 for attendance. His points pace, 31. He's on pace for 31. Easy because he's played every game, so I don't have to try to do math to get the 82 game pace. His career points pace, his career average over an 82 game season is 30 points. So he's on pace to exceed that. So he gets 21 out of 20 for points pace. Impact games. And again, for a player like Foligno, who's not a primary scorer, he is a player that gives you defense, gives you physicality, gives you the occasional goal. Foligno had an impact in 49 out of 56 games, which is 88%. So he gets 8 out of 10 there. He finishes with 39 out of 40 for an A. Solid A, very solid A. And I think that's right on. He has been, and this is I think why we question the Trenyan signing so much. This has been a very nice bounce back season for Marcus Foligno. He is one of the hardest forwards to score against in the entire NHL at 5-on-5. That's indicative of those defensive point shares. So he's playing fantastic defense. He's racking up a ton of hits. He is producing at a solid offensive level, considering who he is and the type of player that he is. He's producing at a solid level. I continue to think that the Trenyan signing was insurance for a potential Foligno injury. Injury that hasn't materialized as of yet, so Trenyan looks kind of like a redundancy. But Foligno's play has been good this year, and it just makes you wish that money would have been used for some top six scoring, what have you. But as far as Foligno goes, he's definitely been getting his money's worth this year, compared to the last couple of years. 2 years ago was yikes. That was not a great season. Last year was a nice bounce back, but obviously could not finish it. This year he's looking to do that, and to try to get into 82 games for the first time since 2018, 2019. So solid A for Foligno, an A for Kaprizov, a B for Eriksson Ek. I feel like those are pretty on point. What do you think? Let me know in the comments if you think those grades are too high, too low. Let us know in the comments where you're at with all three as we continue to roll through these here, right up to the resumption of the season. I do just want to talk a little bit about USA Canada tonight. And you look at the roster for this Canadian team. McKinnon, McDavid, Makar. That's tough to stop. But I feel like this game is obviously going to come down to Hellebuyck Binnington. That is the matchup that's going to decide if the United States wins or if Canada wins. And as much as Canada came out and thoroughly dominated Sweden to start that game, let's not forget that Philip Gustafsson out-dueled Jordan Binnington for a while in that game, which allowed Sweden to mount the comeback and allowed them to get the game to overtime. And I heard that, if the United States wins this game, and even if Canada wins all the way through, because Sweden got that game to overtime and Canada missed out on that third point, that could cost them and prevent them from moving on to the championship game when all is said and done. So just think about that. And Jordan Binnington is very capable. He's played he's played in the Stanley Cup Finals. He's won a Stanley Cup. He was integral in that 2019 St. Louis Blues team, flipping the script from last in the Central to Stanley Cup champions. He was integral to that. But this stage is a little higher up, at least at this point. Now, it is in the middle of the season. It's not Olympic competition, but it feels like it has similar weight to it. And that's why I tend to lean towards the best goalie on the planet, Connor Hellebuyck, to be able to do enough to hold Canada in check. And it might be, too, it could even be a similar score to that Canada-Sweden game where it's 4-3 in overtime. And you feel like, or even in regulation, and you look and you say, 3 goals given up by Hellebuyck. That's not a great night for him. But remember the names that are on the top of this Canada squad. McKinnon, McDavid, Crosby, Stone, Makar. There is a lot of firepower in that Canada lineup. And if anybody's going to hold them in check, it's going to be the Hellebuyck. And that's why I'm picking the U.S. to win, because I think the goalie edge gives them the advantage. I think Canada obviously has the edge in the lineup, but goalie play is that's going to be where this tournament's won or lost. And until I see otherwise, Hellebuyck is the gold standard. So go USA. It should be a fun one tonight. I'm stoked to watch it. Like I said, I've been prepping food like it's the Super Bowl, and I am just outrageously excited for it. So thanks everybody for tuning into today's episode. Again, make sure to join us at noon tomorrow for Denny's latest live show. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we hope you tune in at noon tomorrow. Until then, make sure to subscribe if you have not already, so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. We've got new episodes for you every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.